raging between the new Republic of South Sudan and Sudan, although some may still argue that the conflict is still at an escalation path. The reality is that the Sudan Air Force has been bombing randomly areas designated as the Republic of South Sudan, and the Sudan Armed Forces alongside proxy militias have been attacking the positions of the Sudan People Liberation Army, which is the legitimate military of the new Republic of South Sudan. In response to the persistent aggression by the Sudan Armed Forces and Air Force, the SPLA launched a counterattack in self-defense and took over the contested town of Panthou, which Khartoum has been referring to as Heglig. The SPLA's capture of Panthou raised a lot of trepidation within the so-called international community, whereby they almost called the forces of the Republic of South Sudan as the aggressors, and even issued a threat of sanction on both countries. It has been amazing to see the international community raising concerns about the SPLA's attack on Panthou, while ignoring completely the sequences of events and triggers that led to the response by the SPLA.
We resorted to it because it became only an imperative in that hour that we should eliminate Heglig, because it was being continuously used as a springboard for attacks against our people and against our territory.
In the first place, Heglig is part of South Sudan, which has been occupied by Khartoum. And second to it, Khartoum has been using Heglig to terrorize our people, to attack our people using proxy war militias from the south. And this is their base. They have been attacking us. When we defeat them, then they run to Heglig.
Allow us to clarify the confusion. In the international press, both the demarcation and the recent military operations have been severely misrepresented. In the media, South Sudan has been portrayed as being the aggressor in a conflict that is depicted as beginning on the 11th of April 2012. The truth is much different. Al Jazeera and the Arab press in particular has become a conduit for the NCP's propaganda rather than presenting a balanced representation of escalating tension and violence, which tragically has been directed upon the civilians of South Sudan. The international media has expressed the story starting with the SPLA take control of the Heglig town area, which we know as Panthou in the language of the local Dinka people. This was a defensive move in response to consistent belligerent statements and acts of war upon the SPLA and targeting southern civilians, which began just after South Sudan became independent. Furthermore, Khartoum's belligerence extends well back into the CPA period. This context cannot be ignored. Media representations have tended to ignore the fundamental fact that the recent events were clearly defensive in nature and consistent with international legal principles governing the conduct of war. Depressingly, it seems to us that the radical and racist statement of a leader wanted for crimes against humanity, genocide and war crimes are now considered reputable. Here's the truth. To resolve the conflict, the border needs to be clearly resolved and demarcated. We need to clarify our position and understanding of the border issues for you. The border was agreed clearly in the CPA. This is the January 1st, 1956 line that existed when Sudan was granted independence from the British. This border is only reflected in a 1955 survey map as you see here. There were, however, a few areas, due to manipulations by the British authorities, that saw many of our people placed inside northern states. Particularly tragic was the moving of the 9 Ngok Dinka chieftaincies. So the CPA included a provision for an arbitration mechanism, the Abyei Border Commission, to allow the resolution of this contested part of the border. There are others. It just happens that Heglig, the current site of contention, is linked to the Abyei deliberations. The initial claim of the government of South Sudan is depicted here. The Abyei Border Commission found the line a little further south, but Heglig or Panthou, as we know it, was still considered inside Abyei. Khartoum rejected the findings of the commission, despite agreeing that they will accept them in the CPA. Tension then rose as Khartoum was pressing to create a reality on the ground by manipulating various nomadic groups that move in and out of Abyei area from South Kordofan cause conflict with the local Dinka people. So we proposed to take the case to the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague and accepted its outcome, although not preferential to us. So here is the boundary as determined by the court. Remember, however, this is only setting out the Abyei boundary, not the international boundary, which we continue to contest. Since the government of South Sudan felt it essential to keep talking, we accepted the boundary, hoping to move forward on the many issues that remained and remain unresolved. We have always been open to legal processes in negotiation, but Khartoum has remained uncooperative. Even though the Permanent Court of Arbitration findings saw Abyei reduce further, and in what, as you can see, is an extremely unnatural boundary considering the areas local people live, Khartoum rejected even this, intent on pushing further south. Clearly, Bashir's intention was to prevent the referendum on the status of Abyei because he knew, quite rightly, that the Dinka Ngok living in the area were overwhelmingly in favor of joining Northern Baragazal state, which is to say the Republic of South Sudan. He therefore will lose direct control of the great oil wealth. Khartoum then escalated the situation by occupying Abyei on a bogus pretext, where their forces largely remain today. The SPLA pulled out of Abyei as per the terms agreed with the support of the United Nations. SAF and the associated militias have caused untold sufferings to the civilians of the area, the only ones left for them to harass and attack. Despite the negotiation and agreement that saw the United Nations engage and bring a peacekeeping force to Abyei, Khartoum has continued to increase its military activity all along the border. Then, with South Sudan's independence, provocative military actions on the part of al-Bashir and the NCP in Khartoum, consisting largely of targeting civilians, escalated. This led to the incidents currently at issue in Panthou, near the Unity State, South Kordofan border. Since the Republic of South Sudan gained independence, the government in Khartoum continues to violate the territorial sovereignty of the new country, as shown by the following evidence. Examining the timeline of events from when South Sudan became an independent country, the Sudan Armed Forces continued to violate the territorial sovereignty of the Republic of South Sudan, and the international community failed once again to look at events from when independence was achieved, but rather became hysterical as soon as the SPLA retaliated by capturing Panthou, known as Hijlik, within its right to defend its territory and protect its civilians. Moving forward, negotiations are the preferred option to resolve the current dispute. However, as international law provides, the government of South Sudan will defend itself and all South Sudanese from any continuing aggression. As a part of a negotiated settlement, we need a reliable international presence which can provide us security from the consistent aerial attacks being perpetrated upon our population. A no-fly zone could achieve this. Also, a significant monitoring force of peacekeepers that actively patrol and facilitate border demarcation is essential.